Delighted to be able to be part of the virtual pilgrimage for Lourdes for Ampleforth this year. And it's wonderful to be with you, even though it's over a camera. As you know, I'm no longer in Walsingham, but now I am the parish priest again of St Margaret's, Canning Town in London's East End. So I'm delighted to be with you. And I ask your prayers, please, for me and my parish at this time as I pray for you all. We live in strange, demanding and sometimes frightening times, but I suspect it was always thus. Each generation is faced with the challenges of its age. Over the past year, governments have put in place the material resilience we have needed to face the pandemic, but the real strength needed when faced with suffering and trial is spiritual resilience. The strength of faith in God that opens our hearts and minds, enabling us to see the bigger picture. Wars are not won by ships, tanks and planes, but by the courage, fortitude and dedication of the men and the women who are called to face the breakdown of peace and order. The challenges that humanity faces today demands courage, fortitude, dedication, wisdom and understanding, the fruits of the gift of faith. In a recent article about the loss of faith in Europe, it ended up with this question: if this is what the future holds, what shall we put in religion's place? If nothing, how shall we bear the loss? And if, as many suppose, we can easily do so, what sort of people will we have become? In times of suffering, poverty and oppression, we feel that we are in it all together. In the community where I now serve in London's East End, 2 world wars and the depression of the 1930s meant that people had to work together to survive. So what sort of people have we become today? Are we all in it together? I think a more suitable description of our recent behaviour is given by Frank Sinatra in his song, I Did It My Way. My way seeks to find that important but so often elusive emotion, happiness. But happiness of itself, being an emotion, is dependent on the things and the events of life. It is momentary and of itself does not satisfy. So we keep on looking. Surely one of the great challenges facing our families and communities today is that we live in a world that has lost its sense of God and has created a modern version of idol worship. Psalm 106 describes what happened when Moses came down from the mountain. He says, "You exchanged the God who was your glory for an image of a bull that eats grass." They were worshipping the golden calf. G.K. Chesterton says that when a man stops believing in God, it's not that he believes in nothing. He will believe in anything. Look around you and you will see the truth of Chesterton's words. Modern idolatry offers to make me happy by the worship of self and the acquisition of material things, neither of which can bring satisfaction. They simply act as a form of anaesthetic for the emptiness in our lives, where we seek, but we never find. Jesus asks of us, what does it profit a man to have gained the whole world, but to have lost his very self? In seeking the whole world, it's possible to lose our very self, our soul. For this sort of happiness comes at a high price. I seek happiness by doing my own thing. I choose what I want. Don't tell me what I can choose. It's my life, my body, and I can do with it what I like. Such muddled choices seriously impacts on society, and this is only too evident in today's world. What I want becomes my own personal idol. We all want to be free, to choose our own way in life. It's a fundamental part of being a human being. It sets us apart from the rest of God's creation. The wondrous gift of free choice, so fundamental to human flourishing, can be distorted by a false understanding that freedom of choice is only about what I want, constantly seeking but never finding. As always, Jesus gives us the answer. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. For if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. We know that in our lives it's the selfish choices that we sometimes make that lead to trouble for ourselves and the ones we love. And this trouble affects not only our families, but also the society in which we live. Each generation is faced with the human problems of its times. Today, the emphasis on self, individual success, self-fulfillment, individual freedom, self-actualization is a catastrophe for any family and society, and leads to isolation, loneliness, and abandonment. The unwanted people of our time are the catastrophe of our age. The abandoned mother, the unwanted child, the abused and vulnerable, the confused teenager, the lonely pensioner, the person with long-term disability, the terminally ill, the refugee, those who have lost any sense of hope in their life and are considering suicide. St. Teresa of Calcutta reflects, the greatest disease in the West today is not physical. It is being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for. We can cure physical diseases with medicine, but the only cure for loneliness, despair, and hopelessness is love. There are many in the world who are dying for a piece of bread, but there are many more dying for a little love. The poverty of the West is a different kind of poverty. It is not only a poverty of loneliness, but also of spirituality. There is a hunger for God, as there is a hunger for love. The loneliness of our modern world is not eased by a superficial happiness. Hope arises from a deep well within us that is known as joy. We seek after momentary happiness, but we have forgotten the meaning of joy. Joy is a consequence of knowing that we are unique because we are loved. And this love begins with God. You called, shouted, broke through my deafness. You flared, blazed, banished my blindness. You lavished your fragrance. I gasped, and now I long for you. I tasted you, and now I hunger and thirst. You touch me, and I burn for your peace. These words of St. Augustine reminds us that you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. Our Lady's message at Walsingham, and indeed her message wherever she appears, calls us to listen to the voice of her Son and to do whatever he tells us. In Walsingham, she asked us to build a replica of the Holy House, England's Nazareth. And she invites us to share her joy, the joy that she had at the Annunciation. Now, this house, which Our Lady called home, was the home of St. Joachim and St. Anne, the grandparents of Jesus. It would be the place where she received the love of her parents and the simple living out of faith in God that was the foundation of her family. It was within this loving home and in the midst of the cruelty and the oppression of that moment in history, that the Word became flesh and lived among us. The love of Joachim and Anne that so shaped Mary, already full of grace, would give her the strength of faith to bring to fulfilment God's plan in her life. Mary's yes. The gift of faith, lived by her parents, enabled Mary to respond amidst her anxieties and fears. She would become the instrument of God's wondrous intervention in the affairs of mankind, whereby the Word was made flesh and lived among us. This was the cause of her joy, and this joy she wishes to share with us. For when the desire of our heart discovers the love of our lives, joy becomes a reality, not an idea. It is given to us so that we may live our deepest human instinct is to build a place where we can call home, a place where life is shared, where our joys and hopes, our griefs and our anxieties raise an echo in the hearts of those who we love, a place where we can be ourselves and become what we are intended to be. It is a place where we experience all of the human emotions, good and bad, and where we learn what it is to be truly human, truly alive. Home is the place where we learn unconditional love. It is our experience of this deep well of love that comes through our parents and our family and friends, who are the channels of God's unconditional love for us. It enables us to navigate the good and bad times of life with a sure direction, and to discover that as we give to others, we find the true meaning of happiness in our day-to-day lives. Joy is so often confused with happiness. Home is the place where we learn the difference between these two words. Happiness without joy is meaningless. With joy, it brings purpose, focus, and meaning in our lives. We can't always be happy, but we can always have joy in our hearts. Joy is to happiness what the deep sea is to a puddle. Happiness, like puddles, dry up quickly. Happiness is often temporary and mostly dependent on our choices, feelings, and events. Joy is like the deep sea, ever present, and it comes as a consequence of accepting a gift that has been given to us. And this gift of God's love never dries up. It is a form of companionship, an inner strength that gives comfort. It is a presence that is gentle. And as I journey through life, it is the reassurance that I am never alone. I rejoice, for I have accepted and taken to heart that which will never leave me. Surprise your children, your friends, your family with joy, and they will be happy. Offer them your unconditional love, and they will have a framework and a guide in which to live their lives. So, what will we become? With joy in our lives, like Mary, we shall hear the words of Gabriel. Do not be afraid, Mary, for nothing is impossible for God. Surely the most joyful words ever spoken. And when we take them to heart and say our own yes, we shall find the peace and the happiness we so desire, because we will have the joy of God in our hearts, and we shall build a family and a country that truly knows the meaning of peace, for it has joy in its heart. Our Lady of Lourdes, pray for us.